Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was a Shinigami. While in the Forest of Death, Orochimaru seals away the Kyuubi. This, however, will lead a new power awakening within the Kyuubi container. If you guys enjoyed this What If, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Our hero was currently walking out of the forest on his way towards the hospital. After finishing the second exam, they had ended up having a preliminary round. He wasn't really in a good mood, so he didn't really pay attention to most of the matches. The ones he did watch, however, were pretty good. Sasuke's match was alright in his opinion, though he found it rather disrespectful that the Uchiha had stolen one of Lee's hard-earned moves. He found he wasn't alone in this, as both Guy and Lee had screamed about the unyouthfulness of the Sharingan. He was also able to finally see one of Suna's famed puppeteers in action and had to admit the Guy Kankuro was good. Shino's match was also pretty good. He got a slight bit of satisfaction seeing Shino cripple that big mouth Oto Nin with his bugs. He had completely ignored the match between Ino and Sakura simply because neither of them had any skill whatsoever. One would think he would have paid attention to anything involving Sakura since he was always asking her for dates, though that was just part of his mask. He did, however, know that if that bitch even tried hitting him again, he quickly shook that thought from his head. Anyway, after that match he himself had to fight Kiba. The dog boy had seriously thought he could beat him. Anyway, since he couldn't use most of his chakra, he had settled for a combination of tricks to win his match. The most exciting match, however, was the match between Fuzzy Brows and that Gaara guy. Unfortunately, Lee lost both the match and perhaps his shinobi career. Lee apparently was a speed demon and had those ugly orange leg warmers hiding an incredible amount of weights. Then there was Hinata's match. Now that one pissed him off. You see, he had known Hinata for years. However, because of his situation, he had convinced her to keep their relationship secret, which is what they'd been doing for a long time. Anyway, she had fought against her cousin Neji. The prick didn't just want to beat her though. No, first he had to try and crush her mentally before fighting, knowing he'd win regardless. You see, it was no secret Hinata's father had abandoned her training years ago, though no one knew the real reason why. He had simply said Hinata was weak, though Naruto had his own suspicions. Anyway, long story short, Neji went so far as trying to kill her after the goddamn match was over. It was then when he had lost his patience. The Jounins had stopped Neji. Luckily for him, because of this, Naruto changed directions mid-flight to go to Hinata's side. After some snide remarks from the white-eyed bastard, Naruto had had enough. This time it wasn't the Jounins who stopped Naruto, but the Hokage himself. He had appeared on the ground holding the blonde by the wrist. It was then everyone had seen the kunai he had already pressed into the boy's throat, which was in deep enough to draw blood. Needless to say, it had everyone shocked since nobody knew he could move that fast. Anyway, once Hinata was taken away by the medics, he himself went back into the stands. Though not before telling Neji he'd be kicking his ass should they fight in the third exam. This is the reason he was very pleased when he found he'd be fighting the Hyuga bastard a month from now in the tournament. He had studied the matchups for a while just to know who he'd fight after he cruised the Hyuga, and this is what he found. First match, Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji. Second match, Uchiha Sasuke vs Sabaku no Gaara. Third match, Aburame Shino vs Sabaku no Kankuro. Fourth match, Nara Shikamaru vs Kinyuta Dosu. Sabaku no Temari fights the winner of the fourth match. He was broken out of his thoughts upon entering the hospital. There in front of him is none other than Kakashi. Deciding to play nice, he went up to the man only to be interrupted before he could speak. "Before you ask, I can't train you," spoke Kakashi. "Let me guess, you're training your precious Uchiha," was Naruto's reply. Ma, don't be like that. Anyway, I already found someone to train you," said Kakashi. Once he said that, closet pervert Ebisu came out of hiding, causing Naruto to frown. "No thanks." "Oh, and just for the record, I wasn't going to ask you to train me," said Naruto before pushing past the Jounin. "You know, I do hope I make Chunin, at least that way I get off this so-called team," spoke the blonde before walking up to the receptionist and getting Hinata's room number. Meanwhile, both Kakashi and Ebisu were stunned, Kakashi more so than Ebisu. Ebisu had known that the boy was more than he let on to be since that night they met. While he may have initially disliked the blonde, that opinion had changed upon seeing the good impact he made on Konohamaru. He simply chuckled before leaving Kakashi still standing there stunned, speechless, before he shrugged it off and went for Sasuke. An hour later found Naruto in Sandame's office. He had actually just gotten in after that rotten secretary decided to do her job. After having the seal that the Hibi put on him removed, he decided to ask about the other one. Ojizen, did you know about the suppression seal? Asked he blonde quietly. What suppression seal, Naruto-kun? Asked the old man, knowing there were many holding Kyuubi back. The one that's been suppressing all of my abilities, and I mean all of them, said the blonde. Explained, said the old man. Firstly, I'm not getting enough spiritual energy running through me, which is screwing up my chakra control. Second, I found out it's affecting my speed, strength, and my memory, explained the blonde. Sorry, Naruto-kun, that I didn't know about, said Sarutobi. The blonde nodded hearing this, and was just about to leave when he turned back. Ojizen, do you know anybody who could train me for the exams? Asked the blonde. What happened to Kakashi? Asked the old man. Naruto scowled before answering. Apparently his time's better spent on the village's precious Uchiha, said the blonde, spitting the name out. Sandaime frowned hearing this before writing something on a piece of paper and handing it to the blonde. Seeing the boy's confused look, he explained. You should find a white-haired old man named Jiraiya near the bathhouses. Once you do, hand him that and he'll train you, said the old man. Are you sure? I mean, he's not another of the demon haters, is he? Asked the blonde. No, far from it. He was actually one of my students and the man that trained the fourth, said Sarutobi. The blonde's eyes went wide hearing this before he thanked the old man and left the building. Once he was gone, Sarutobi sighed. It seems he'd made a mistake allowing Naruto to be with Kakashi. Elsewhere, said Kapi sneezed for the 5th time. He was currently training Sasuke to enhance his speed. He had big plans for the Uchiha concerning these exams. There was no way his favorite student would lose to any of them. With Naruto later, Naruto finally arrived at the bathhouses. He'd run into Sakura earlier, who was complaining about not being able to find Sasuke. Needless to say, he had completely brushed her off. After searching around a bit, he decided he'd relax while he could and walked inside. It was while he was heading inside that he heard the sound. He recognized the sound, of course, since his pervert of a sensei makes it a lot. It was giggling, perverted giggling. However, instead of going over there, he decided to mind his own business. After a while of the giggling, his curiosity got the better of him, and he looked towards the noise. Looking the man over, he saw long white hair that went to past the man's mid-back. He wore sandals that were more common to samurai, or so he'd heard. He also wore a red vest or jacket he couldn't tell from behind, and he had a large scroll on his back. Curiosity once again winning over his more cautious nature, he decided to speak up. However, upon getting no response, he got out of the so relaxing hot water and walked over to the man. Excuse me, you wouldn't happy to be Jiraiya, would you? Asked the blonde. And if I am? Asked the man, not even looking at him. Then I have something for you. This caught the man's attention. Turning his head, he looked the blonde over and didn't like what he saw. It wasn't until he saw the whisker-like marks on his cheeks did recognition enter the man's eyes. What would that be, Gaki? Naruto said nothing, simply handing the man the Hokage's note from his pocket. Jiraiya read it over before nodding to himself. Folding the note up, he looked at the blonde before speaking. Alright, I'll train you, Gaki. Meet me here tomorrow morning at 9. Getting a nod from the boy, he turned back to his work. Once he knew he was gone, he went back to giggling. The next morning, Naruto was currently heading once more towards the bathhouses. He had been up since about 7. It's not that he woke up that early for this reason, it just happened since he was so used to getting up early. In the shinobi world, most people were up at about 5 and at home around 8. He quickly arrived in the same spot he met Jiraiya, finding he was the first to arrive. 2 minutes later, Jiraiya himself came strolling up. Taking this time, the blonde studied the man. He found his shirt and pants were a very light green. He still wore the red vest and had some kind of haidite on his head with the kanji for oil. Once the man reached the blonde, they both walked off until they found a lake. Once they did, the man ran through a few seals before slamming his hand to the ground, calling out, Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. There was a cloud of smoke which cleared, revealing a toad with a large scroll in its mouth. Once the scroll was on the ground and unrolled, Naruto, following Jiraiya's instructions, quickly signed his name to it in blood, of course, before putting down a handprint as well. Once that was done, Jiraiya explained he'd be teaching the blonde how to summon. After a while, Jiraiya decided to let the blonde try it out. What resulted from this got sweat drops from both. I guess my control is still screwed from what the Hibi did, muttered the blonde, catching Jiraiya's attention. What are you talking about, Gaki? Asked the white-haired pervert. During the second exam, this creepy grass Nin attacked my team and put a 5-point seal on me. I had Ojizen remove it, but I guess the damage is still done, said the blonde. Jiraiya's face darkened hearing that there were only 3 people besides him who could use that seal. One of them just so happened to be very snake-like. He quickly shook those thoughts away before telling the blonde to start water walking. Seeing his confused look, he spoke up. "Kid, what did Kakashi teach you?" asked the pervert. "Tree walking," said the blonde. "That's it?" asked the man with a scowl. "Yeah, not like I expected much anyway," said the blonde. "Why'd you say that?" asked Jiraiya. "People have been trying to hinder me all my life. I had no reason to believe he wouldn't. Besides, it's not like he pays attention to anyone besides the Uchiha anyway," said the blonde. "You don't like your team?" asked the man. "No, I don't. I'd quit if I could, but I'm stuck unless I make Chunin," said the boy. "Not necessarily," said Jiraiya. "I could talk to the old man and make you my apprentice," he finished. "You'd do that?" asked the blonde. "Yeah, you actually remind me of my last apprentice," said Jiraiya. "Yandane," said the blonde, getting a nod from the man. "Honestly, I'm confused on the man. I don't know whether to hate him or admire him," said Naruto. Jiraiya said nothing, knowing what the boy was talking about. He had talked to Sarutobi yesterday, so he knew how the blonde was treated around the village. He'd also been told about the blonde's mask, which he's actually seen very little of. After a moment more, the duo got back to work with Jiraiya telling the blonde how to do the exercise. Once he did, he left the blonde to his own devices while he went off for a bit of research. Jiraiya returned to find Naruto passed out under the trees. It had been a couple of hours, plenty of time for him to go see the old man and get some research done. In that time, he had got the old man's consent and taken Naruto off of Team 7, officially making him his apprentice. He had also found out about the suppression seal that the blonde had neglected to mention, though he paid it no mind, figuring that the boy thought that if Sandane couldn't do it, then no one could. He shook himself from his thoughts before waking the blonde. Once he got him up, he spoke. "Alright, I've got the old man to agree, so you're off Team 7 and as of this moment my apprentice," spoke the pervert, getting a nod from the blonde. "Now this means lots of things, most importantly that you'll need new clothes." He stopped, seeing the frown come on the boy's face. "That's impossible. No one will sell me any good clothes or tools for that matter, since everyone wants me to die," said the blonde. Jiraiya nodded at that, since it made perfect sense with everything else that's happened in the boy's life. "If that's the case, I'll pick up some things for you, alright. Next is from now on I'll be training you hard. While I would normally leave and do some research, you've been neglected enough as it is." He paused for breath before continuing. "That's all for today. Meet me here tomorrow same time." Getting a nod from the blonde, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. That night, Naruto once again awoke in the sewers he now associated with his mind. This time was different, however, as he felt himself being pulled in a certain direction. Upon reaching his destination, he once again found himself facing the fox, only this time there was no wall blocking it. "Come closer, kid," spoke the fox. Not one to show fear, he did as asked and didn't even budge when the claws shot out at him, stopping just a few inches away from him. "Impressive, you show no fear," spoke the fox. "But you're still far too weak. What do you want, fox?" spoke Naruto in an annoyed tone. "You've impressed me, kid. I wanted to see you for myself is all," spoke the fox. "If that's all you wanted, then I'm leaving." With that said, the blonde turned and started to walk out. "I could break the suppression seal," spoke the fox, stopping Naruto in his tracks. "What do you want in return?" asked Naruto warily. "I want out," said the fox. "No deal," said the blonde before once again turning away. "I didn't mean it that way," said the fox, getting the blonde's attention. Seeing this, it continued. "I meant you could summon me out. I mean, it's cramped in here, I need to stretch my legs," said the fox. "You sound like such a girl right now," said the boy with a smirk. "I am a girl," roared Kyuubi, knocking the blonde on his ass. With that, there was a puff of smoke which cleared to reveal something completely different. Inside the cage now stood a girl who looked to be about 15 years old. She had long red hair, a pair of fox ears and pink eyes. She had a considerable amount of bust as well as 9 tails swaying behind her. It was at this point Naruto realized one critical thing: she was completely naked. This of course resulted in him being launched backwards by a massive nosebleed. Once he regained consciousness and was back on his feet, he looked over, finding her to have some clothes on now. She now wore a pair of black pants and a pink shirt with some black sandals on her feet. He didn't know whether to be grateful or cry because of this. "Anyway, like I was saying, I'll remove the suppression seal if you let me out every once in a while," spoke Kyuubi, getting a nod from the blonde. Once she saw that red chakra leaked out the cage before engulfing the blonde while some went down the corridor. She was impressed since the boy wasn't screaming though he was whimpering from the pain. Finally it was over, leaving the blonde panting while she looked him over. He had now developed an impressive set of claws as well as some fangs. Finally the whisker marks on his cheeks thickened, and his eyes had become slitted but were still blue. Lastly his hair became wilder and shaggier, turning a darker yellow, making it resemble fur. Then just as suddenly as he changed he was normal again, though his hair remained the same, and he was a bit taller. "What the hell was that?" panted the blonde. "That was your gift for impressing me. If you'll look you'll notice you now sport a nice set of claws as well as some fangs. Along with that I've enhanced your senses to that of a kitsune," spoke Kyuubi, getting a nod from the boy. "What's the catch? Am I part demon now or something?" asked the blonde. "You've been part demon for a while now," spoke Kyuubi, getting a confused look from the blonde. "Remember the bridge incident where you took some of my power since then? I just activated your abilities is all," said Kyuubi. Naruto nodded, hearing this part, though it didn't change much to him anyway. "Alright, you might want to sit down. We have lots to discuss," said Kyuubi. Naruto nodded before making a leather reclining chair appear and sitting down. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi was just finishing up his paperwork when he felt it. He hadn't felt a power like this for 12 years. Looking into his crystal ball he found Naruto still fast asleep, his body having a blue outline glowing around it which quickly faded. He also noticed his clawed hands just before they returned to their regular shape. Then for just a split second he saw a sword appear by the blonde, though it too faded out of existence. It was for this reason he decided to keep watching just in case anything else happened. The next day, Naruto was awoken to the sound of knocking on his door, which was something quite odd for someone who never had visitors. Upon answering the door he found it was none other than Jiraiya with a large bag in his hand, which he quickly tossed to the blonde before walking inside. "Hurry up and get changed, we have lots to do today," said Jiraiya, getting a nod from the blonde, who took the pack to change. He came out wearing black shinobi sandals and pants that were bandaged at the ends. He also wore a black shirt which he thought to be rather tight and a large black trench coat. He had also replaced his blue headband for a black one but kept the same hairite. Getting a nod from the older man, who quickly grabbed his shoulder, both disappeared in a puff of smoke. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi sighed behind the mountain of paperwork he found himself doing. He'd been thinking about the situation with Naruto all night before finally making the decision to tell the boy about his family. He just hoped that the boy would take the news well. With Naruto, to say Jiraiya was impressed would be an understatement. They had come out here and Naruto was stronger and faster than yesterday. He also noticed that the blonde's attention span had increased as well as his chakra control. He had also checked for his elemental affinity, finding the boy's chakra to be wind-natured. They were currently in the middle of a spar since Jiraiya had wanted to test the boy's level. It seems the boy had learned more than one jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll, if his usage of Kagekanai no Jutsu was any indication. Calling for a stop, he decided to test the boy's summoning skills. A few quick seals and a thumb bite later and Naruto was standing on a medium-sized toad. Naruto dismissed it before using Kyuubi's chakra per Jiraiya's instruction. This time the cloud of smoke was massive and Naruto was starting out at above the trees. "Jiraiya, why have you summoned me?" yelled the toad. Naruto, who was panting, quickly explained to the toad what was going on. The toad was skeptical at first, but after looking closer at the boy knew he had done it. In the end the toad Gamabunta simply said to summon him if he needed anything, though once he could they were getting a drink. Jiraiya, who was watching from his hiding spot, couldn't believe it. Naruto had done what even he couldn't do in befriending the boss toad. He and the old man would definitely have to talk, and soon something about the kid was far too familiar. Elsewhere, 10 people were currently gathered inside of a large room. Each of them wore a black kimono, a black hakama, a white sash around the waist, and a white haori. They were currently lined up in 2 parallel lines facing each other, with one, the oldest, standing at the head between each. He himself was an older man. He had a bald head and a long white beard that he had somehow managed to bind together with a long black string. In his left hand he carried a large wooden staff, and although he was old he exuded an aura of power stronger than anyone in the room. After looking around and seeing everyone gathered, he spoke up. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know you all have lots to do, so I'll get straight to the point." He paused for a moment, then continued. "Last night there was a massive amount of Ryatsu detected in the human world," stated the old man. After this was said, one person raised their hand and spoke after receiving permission. "So large amounts of Ryatsu are always detected there. How does this warrant any concern?" The speaker was female, judging by the feminine voice. True. However, what has my concern is that I've been told that in 3 years this person could develop as much Ryatsu as Kurosaki Ichigo had when he first started. Spoke the old man, shocking many. The Ryatsu vanished as quickly as it appeared, however. I will be having the area monitored in case it appears again. It goes without saying that we cannot have eyes in finding the one who emitted such power, said the old man. He paused, then continued. I will be sending the 10th Division Captain to monitor the situation. The rest of you are dismissed. With that, all but the said person left, leaving the two alone. He was young, the youngest in the group, looking to be in his early teens, and had short white hair and green eyes. He also had a sword band wrapped around his back that was made from a long pale green cloth, which was of course holding his sword. You will be traveling to the elemental continents, to the village of Konoha. The elemental countries are all currently hidden behind a very powerful illusion isolating them from the rest of the world. He paused for a moment, then continued. You are to find the one emitting the Ryatsu and monitor them. Any findings you make, report back to me directly. You leave tomorrow, finished the older man. Hi, Yamato-sama, spoke the white-haired youth before leaving. The man known as Yamato sighed. Hopefully they could prevent anything from getting too dangerous around there. He wasn't worried that Hitsugaya Toshiro, although young, was one of the best, which is exactly why he sent him. Still, something about that Ryatsu was familiar to him. It was for this reason that he was worried. He knew of only one person who had stayed there, as well as her child. He quickly shook that thought away, as the child was reported to have died the night he was born. And with as many people who had died that night, it was definitely possible. He sighed once again before heading outside. He definitely needed some air. It was nice and quiet. The perfect setting if you asked Uzumaki Naruto. He'd been up for about an hour now, sitting on top of the monument. For as long as he could remember, he would come and watch the sun rise from on top of the monument. Nobody was ever up this early, which meant no one was glaring at him. Every day was the same for him: wake up and watch the sun rise. Then slap on a cheesy grin and deal with the glares, insults, and all around mistreatment all day. Though he truly loved the village, he had long since given up on its people. As far as he was concerned, they were a lost cause, especially the older generation. His generation was in the middle ground, while Konohamaru's generation was fine. It was for them that he would become Hokage. It's funny, in the beginning becoming Hokage had just been a part of his mask, like his infatuation with Sakura. It was Hinata that had convinced him to actually go for it, and it was for her that he would. For them, they had things all planned out. If he were to become Hokage and she the Hyuga head, then together they'd be able to change things. The first of which would be removing and banning the caged bird seal. That is, of course, if he lived long enough to make it happen. While he pretended to be one, he was no one's fool. He had known for a while the council was trying to have him killed, especially Sandame's former teammates. Then there was Danzo to deal with, since the fool was trying to turn him into a weapon. He shook himself from his thoughts, seeing the sun coming up, and headed back towards his apartment. Once back inside, he settled himself down before going to go see his resident Vixen. Navigating through the halls of his mind, he quickly found himself in front of Kyuubi, finding her still sleeping. For a moment, he just stood back and watched her as she slept. He couldn't believe the being in front of him was the fearsome Kyuubi. He'd mistake her for an angel if he didn't know who she was. The two had already made peace with each other, though she still wouldn't tell him why she attacked. He had also changed her surroundings a bit, at least what he could. Instead of the cage that once held her, she was now in a bedroom of sorts. She of course had a bed, a desk, a bookshelf, and a fireplace. There was a couch in the room, as well as 2 reclining chairs. He had created a door which leads to a garden with flowers of every kind he knew. Finally, she now wore a black choker around her neck with the kanji for seal in the front. After a moment more, he changed his mind and hopped onto the couch to catch some extra sleep. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi was engaged in the fiercest battle of his life. He was battling against his greatest enemy to date. An enemy far worse than Orochimaru could ever be. This enemy just couldn't stay down, and was more annoying than Guy's youth rants. It was the greatest enemy of all Kages, the enemy known as paperwork. In all of his years as Hokage combined, he still couldn't stop it. It was Yondaime who had, gaining him the title of greatest Kage ever. Sadly, he had taken the secret with him to his grave. Normally the Sandaime wouldn't be caught dead in this office at this hour. However, today was different, as he had plans for today. Today would be the day that he'd tell Naruto of his heritage. He had a feeling he wouldn't be around much longer, and didn't want to take this secret to his grave. With that thought in mind, he put a bit more effort into his work, hoping to finish this soon. With Jiraiya, he was also up early working. He hadn't done any research since he had taken Naruto as his apprentice. The kid was like a sponge absorbing whatever he could teach him, especially jutsus. He had learned the few jutsus he taught him quickly, though he kept going until he mastered it instead of just learning it and trying another one. They'd been mostly working on the boy's taijutsu and chakra control. While his control improved a bit, it still wasn't that good. His taijutsu, however, was just horrible. Apparently the kid hadn't been lying when he'd said people had been trying to hinder him. While the boy could brawl, it was nothing in comparison to a true taijutsu style. He did notice, however, the blonde seemed to be learning quickly, though that could probably be because he was tired of losing their spars all the time. He had also learned a lot from his new apprentice, such as the fact Kyuubi's a girl and apparently a hot one. He had been trying to get Naruto to use her chakra when Naruto told him how he met her. That was the first time he had actually wished that Kyuubi was sealed in him instead. He had also been helping the boy hone his new senses. The boy's senses had increased at least 10 times. He could now make an Inuzuka's nose look like that of a regular human. He also now had a great pair of eyes which let him see at a distance, gave him night vision, and apparently could make things out in greater detail. He shook himself from his thoughts before turning back to the springs. He was careful to keep his giggling quiet, as these were all A and B level kunoichi he was using for his research. This was the only bad thing about starting this early. All the strong kunoichi were here since they couldn't come any other time. He shook his head quickly and got back to work, praying to not be caught. With Naruto had just been awakened by Kyuubi. Once he was, she immediately got down to business. She had been teaching the blonde everything they wouldn't teach him in the academy, and some things they hadn't taught at all. Naruto, for his part, was actually learning it and remembering due to his now unsuppressed mind. This had been going on since they had first spoken. She was currently teaching the blonde how to dispel genjutsu. They had already discovered that he would never be able to use genjutsu, but she'd teach him how to break and counter them. She had gone through his memories and was determined to have him ready for this tournament. Especially with him there, he'd need to be, otherwise he'd die. She was broken from her thoughts, feeling a presence near her vessel's body. "Kid, time to go, someone's in the apartment," spoke Kyuubi. Naruto nodded with narrowed eyes before he faded out. Real world. When Naruto awoke, his hand immediately went around the handle of a kunai. He made sure not to move anything but his hand, keeping himself under the sheets of his bed. This wasn't the first time this happened. He'd had years of experience dealing with assassination attempts. "Oh, wake up, Gaki, Sarutobi-sensei wants to see you," came Jiraiya's voice. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief hearing his voice. "You know you shouldn't do that," spoke Naruto, surprising Jiraiya before removing the blanket, showing the kunai in his hand. "It could get you killed," finished the blonde. "Anyway, get dressed, the old man wants us there in 30 minutes, spoke Jiraiya, hiding his surprise, getting a nod from the boy. With that, he grabbed the boy by the shoulder before they both disappeared in a poof of smoke. Hokage Tower. The old man was currently gazing out the window towards the Hokage monument. After a few more moments, he sat back in his seat and lit his pipe. Taking a few puffs, he exhaled before turning his attention to the two in the room. "I've given this a lot of thought and have determined that it's time you learned of your family, Naruto-kun," spoke the old man, causing Naruto's eyes to go wide. "Now, before I begin, you must know that this must remain a secret. As such, only tell those you feel you can trust fully." He finished, getting a nod from the blonde. "Your family, Naruto-kun, originated from Kusa, grass, and is the noblest family in our village. They are also the most secretive clan to exist within Konoha. In fact, they are so secretive except for us no one knows they even exist. Your clan, Naruto-kun, is known as the Senju," said the old man. "Unfortunately, the clan nearly died out during the Great Shinobi Wars. I was never told how just that they nearly died out. Those that managed to survive split up in 2 different directions. Some came and settled here in Fire Country, and eventually building and naming our village," said Sarutobi. "Wait, if that's the case, then both Shodame and Naidame would be related to me, right?" said Naruto with wide eyes. "That's correct, my senseis. The Shodame and Naidame Hokages are in turn your uncle and great-grandfather," spoke Sarutobi, much to Naruto's and Jiraiya's shock. "Wait, you're telling me he's related to Tsunade?" said Jiraiya with wide eyes. "He's her nephew," said Sarutobi. "Wait, what about my parents?" asked Naruto. Sarutobi sighed, knowing the easy part was over with. Now would be the hard part, hopefully, though Naruto wouldn't overreact. "Your mother is a mystery to me, Naruto-kun. Sadly, all I know is her name, Kushina," spoke the old man. "Your father, however, I know plenty about. He was one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. He was actually a lot like you are. His name was Senju Namikaze Minato. Spoke Sandaime, waiting for the explosion. He sighed, however, when it didn't come. Wait, you're telling me he's Yandaime's Gaki? Said Jiraiya before he shook his head, mumbling to himself about how he couldn't figure it out. Are you telling me my own father did this to me? Said Naruto angrily. Sarutobi sighed once again, this time looking like the old man that he was. He knew this would happen the minute the blonde found out. While the blonde used to look up to Yandaime, his image of him shattered when he found out about Kyuubi being sealed in him by the man. Naruto himself was beyond pissed. He couldn't understand how the man could be his father yet force him to live a life worse than death. The man had ruined his life before he even had a chance at living it. Tell me, Naruto-kun, spoke Sandaime, breaking the boy from his thoughts. Could you sacrifice someone else's child when you had one yourself? Could you trust anyone else besides your own flesh and blood with power like Kyuubi's? The blonde shinobi sighed, hearing that of course he couldn't do something like that. He could never see himself forcing someone else to live his life. He really couldn't see himself handing a power like Kyuubi's to anyone, especially people like the Uchihas and Hyugas. So what now? Spoke Naruto quietly. With that they discussed other things, namely his inheritance. This of course included a house and a nice portion of the village. It also included some money as well as a few scrolls, including the Forbidden Scroll. Elsewhere, Hitsuguya Toshiro scowled as he walked down the streets of Konoha. He'd been here for 2 weeks and still hadn't found who he was looking for. He had discovered that most of the shinobi had a large amount of Ryatsu, though he hadn't found anyone with enough to warrant any concern. He had, however, felt a presence that was different from the others. When he went to investigate, he had found a young red-headed shinobi with the kanji for love on his forehead and a large gourd on his back. While his presence was different, it wasn't who he was looking for. He had also discovered that the one they had called Hokage had a lot of Ryatsu, enough to become a Shinigami when he died. He was broken from his thoughts when a different presence hit his senses. Following it, he came to a small stand of some kind. Upon entering, he found a blonde shinobi who looked to be around the same age as he himself looked. He raised an eyebrow, seeing the number of bowls the blonde had stacked to the side. Sitting down, he ordered 1 bowl of miso before closing his eyes and focusing on the blonde's Ryatsu. It took him a few minutes to find it, which was a surprise. But upon finding it, he inwardly smirked at finding who he was looking for. Naruto himself was on his 8th bowl. Jiraiya had given him the day off, not really surprising for what he learned today. I mean, who wouldn't be surprised about finding out they were of the noblest clan in their village after living the life he lived for 12 years. Even still, he knew it wouldn't change anything right now. He couldn't touch anything of his family's until he was either 16 or until Tsunade, who he found out was one of the Sannin, returned, as she is his last known living relative. He had been told that the reason no one knows of the Senju clan was because members of the clan don't use the clan name. Apparently the males of the clan always used a different clan name while females dropped it altogether. This was why his father was known as Namikaze Minato and not Senju. He scowled thinking of that man. As far as he was concerned, the man, while noble, was a fool. He quickly shook his head, removing the negative thoughts before finishing the last of his ramen. Once done, he paid, thanked I am and the old man, and left, heading for the one spot in the village where he knew he could be alone. Hokage Tower. Both Sarutobi and Jiraiya were still in the office. They had seen how Naruto had taken the news and felt for the boy. Though the blonde had stopped wearing his mask, neither would be able to tell what he was thinking if not for his eyes. The blonde's eyes had changed for just a split second, but they had both seen it clearly. The coldness in the boy's eyes when he looked down at the village would have frozen it over if they had the power. Jiraiya himself was currently lost in thought. How was it he had Minato's son as his apprentice and didn't know it? He should have seen it from the beginning. The two had too many similarities. Both had bright blonde hair as well as those deep blue eyes, which no one else in the village had. Both of them were ninjutsu sponges, and neither could use genjutsu to save their lives. Both were extremely protective of their friends as well. Both had a presence that immediately captured the attention of everyone in the room. But the thing that topped all of that was their determination. Both were determined to accomplish their goals, so much so that you had no choice but believe they could do it no matter how impossible it seems. For Minato, that was stopping Kyuubi, and for Naruto, that is gaining the village's acknowledgement. That would probably be the only real thing about Naruto when he was under the mask. Everything else was a stretch according to his sensei. While it's true the boy had a playful side, cheerfulness was something he lacked, as he had never been cheerful for anything in his life. He quickly shook those thoughts from his head, hoping to keep the negativity out. After a few more minutes, the Toad Sage stood before disappearing in a puff of smoke, leaving Sarutobi to his thoughts. Elsewhere, Sasuke was panting heavily. Upon awakening, he had been told by Kakashi that his training would begin immediately. With his Sharingan, they had began working on his speed and taijutsu. By remembering and focusing on Lee's movements, he was able to copy it. He smirked to himself at that thought. Though the spandex-wearing teen had beaten him before, he knew it wouldn't happen again. In fact, he was pretty sure no one in the tournament could beat him. After all, he was an Uchiha, so it was only natural he'd be better than them. That night, Naruto sighed, staring up at the moonlit sky. He had come directly to this spot after leaving Ichiraku's, not stopping for anything. This spot was his getaway that no one, not even Hinata, knew about. This spot was where he came whenever the problems of the village got to him. He had also stayed here for a while when he was thrown out of the orphanage. He had stayed here for 2 years until he met the Hokage when he was 6. Glancing around one last time, his gaze landed on the lake for a brief instant before he turned and headed back to the village. After a while, he found himself back in the village, jumping across the rooftops. He stopped, however, feeling a strong killing intent from behind him. Turning around, he saw the red-headed Suna Genin Sabaka no Gaara. Blue and green eyes stared each other down for a few moments before the redhead spoke up. "Your aura is different. The power in it is the same as what I sensed 2 weeks ago," spoke the Sunanin, his emotionless expression still in place, though curiosity was in his voice. "Things change," was Naruto's response. "I'm going to enjoy killing you," said the Suna Genin before he disappeared in a whirl of sand. Naruto himself simply turned around and continued on his way, not even bothering to give what was said any thought. Not that he wasn't worried, because he knew the Sunanin would hold true if given the chance, as well as the fact he could feel the demonic presence coming from the redhead. The reason he didn't think about it, however, was this: he was too tired to give a shit right now. That's all there was to it. The only thing on the blonde's mind at the moment was getting back to his crappy apartment and going to sleep. Arriving at his apartment, the blonde quickly unlocked the door before walking straight to his bed and collapsing face first, falling asleep instantly. Mindscape. The blonde opened his eyes, finding himself in the halls of his mind. It took him very little time to find his way to what he now called Kyuubi's den. The Vixen, seeing him, motioned for him to approach, which he did cautiously. While he wasn't afraid of Kyuubi, he knew that it was time for his combat training. Kyuubi had been teaching how to fight since the beginning. While it's true he'd been fighting all his life, he was a brawler and had no set style or any proper form. Kyuubi was fixing that problem, teaching him a style from her own clan to reflect the blonde's new demonic heritage. Once he was close enough, Kyuubi pounced, coming at him hard and fast. Naruto groaned because of this, knowing it would be a long night. 2 weeks later, the countdown to the tournament was over. The weeks to some of the participants had passed far too quickly, while for others, such as Sabuku no Gaara, it didn't pass quickly enough. The village had been flooded with people to see the tournament, most betting on either the Hyuga or the Uchiha to win it. During this time, Naruto had not been seen in the village once. The villagers had begun spreading rumors of his death because of this. In the whole month, only 3 people had seen the blonde in the village: Sarutobi, Gaara, and the owner of Ichiraku's. None of them, however, made any comments upon hearing the rumors. Naruto himself was currently standing at Team 7's traditional training grounds with Jiraiya. The reason I say traditional training grounds is because every Team 7, including Sarutobi's Genin team, the Sannin, Yandame's Genin team, Kakashi's, and Naruto's own previous team, had always trained here. They were just finishing up Naruto's warm-up exercises. Jiraiya had told him warming up now would get him ready for his match. This was the sight Hyuga Hinata saw upon arriving there, where she was supposed to meet the blonde. She blushed heavily upon seeing Naruto again. While they had known each other for years, Hinata still blushed every time she saw him, which she knew he would never figure out why, because of his lack of knowledge on certain subjects as a result of his childhood. She had also heard the rumors of Naruto's death but knew they weren't true. She knew Naruto, as stubborn as he is, wouldn't die until he accomplished his goals, and she wouldn't allow it until she accomplished hers. She once again blushed heavily at that thought, and the naughty thoughts that it triggered. Naruto looked up and smiled, seeing his closest friend. This wasn't the smile of his mask, but one that Hinata had the privilege of being one of the only people to see from him, a true smile. After the introductions were made and greetings exchanged, Jiraiya grabbed both Genin by the shoulders before disappearing in a whirl of leaves. Stadium. The stadium was packed with everyone from villagers to the Fire Country's daimyo. Sarutobi himself was seated in a special booth reserved for the kages of the participants. Beside him sat the Kazekage who had arrived not long ago. Looking down, Sarutobi saw all but 2 genin had arrived, those 2 being Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. He wasn't the only person, however, that noticed this, for everyone did. For most, they were wondering where the Uchiha was, while some of the villagers smirked, not seeing Naruto, believing the rumors to be true. Neji himself was smirking, believing Naruto had run away, not wanting to face him. Everyone looked up when Gaara took a few steps back. Temari and Kankuro, seeing this, did likewise, knowing Gaara had reasons for doing anything. They moved just in time as a whirlwind of leaves picked up, obscuring everyone's vision. When it cleared, there stood a completely different Uzumaki Naruto than they remembered. They looked over his new outfit, some, the females drooling, seeing how the shirt clung to him, showing off his muscles while his trench coat blew in the wind. Moving their gaze, they saw along with him was the Hyuga heiress Hinata, and for those who knew of him, the Toad Sannin Jiraiya. Jiraiya, after confirming they were on time, looked at the blonde, receiving a nod before once again taking Hinata by the shoulder, this time disappearing in a poof of smoke. Naruto turned, feeling the killing intent directed at him, to find Gaara glaring at him. Seeing this, the blonde leveled his own glare, unconsciously releasing his own killing intent, which combined with Kyuubi's. This of course startled all the shinobi on the field. The Leaf Nin caused they had never seen the blonde like this. The Sunanin, however, were shocked that the blonde produced a level of killing intent that surpassed Gaara's own. Hate himself, however, was shivering, feeling Kyuubi's killing intent again, as were any other shinobi who had ever felt it. What shocked them, however, was that Naruto seemed to not even notice. Then just as quickly as it escaped, it disappeared, letting everyone breathe a sigh of relief, while Gaara grinned maniacally. Neither Gaara nor Naruto moved, both staring each other down hard. The stare down was broken, however, when Hate spoke up, catching their attention. Telling everyone not fighting to clear out, which they did. Only Naruto and Neji were left on the ground. Neji stared at the blonde coldly, while the blonde looked almost bored. In the stands, Sakura scoffed at the flashy appearance of the blonde. Ino, however, was drooling at what she saw. She had thought Naruto was cute for a long time, as she had seen him before he donned the orange monstrosity. She remembered this version of Naruto from before he had started his pranking career. This was the Naruto that glared back at those who glared at him. This was the Naruto that would hit you before he smiled at you. All in all, this was what was underneath the prankster, the real Naruto, and she couldn't be happier seeing him again. She always did like the bad boy type after all. It was this Naruto that she liked, which in turn had set off her crush on the Uchiha, as he was somewhat like this Naruto since he had a badass aura about him, though it was nowhere near as strong as Naruto's is. Sarutobi himself smiled. It seemed it was time to see what Naruto could really do. It was then that Jiraiya appeared in a poof of smoke beside him before sitting in the chair that was left for him. The ANBU members in the arena each had smirks hidden behind their masks. Each of these people were once charged with watching the blonde during his childhood and had seen the things he would do to protect himself. They had seen when the mobs would try to get him, and he would fight the entire mob even though he knew he'd lose. Another person, however, paid him no mind. This was Hyuga Hayashi, head of the Hyuga clan. In his mind, the blonde stood no chance. He was fighting a Hyuga after all. It was for this reason he told Hanabi, his youngest daughter, to watch the match closely. Hate himself was smirking inwardly. He honestly felt bad for the Hyuga. For this Naruto was different than the other one, he could feel it. Hell, he could tell just by the way he stood. This was the Naruto he had heard about, the one that children were told to stay away from by their parents. For most of the shinobi, it wasn't because of the Kyuubi, since they had faith in Yondaime. No, it was because Naruto didn't take any shit and wouldn't hesitate to hurt those who crossed him. He quickly shook himself from his thoughts before speaking. First match, Hyuga Neji vs Uzumaki Naruto. Hajime. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.